Simigiget, Sigidam Hanach, Kanskuba Wilsuk, Hetkum Sketwa, Lachsen Sich, Will Kalhuxley, Wilp Good Gunuch, Will Sawitwi. Luam Godi, when Gassam, I'm really happy to see everyone here. Toisi Nisam Will Buxam, I'm glad that you all can make it. Thank you for coming. My name is Hetkum Get. My English name is Brett Hewson, and I just wanted to thank everybody again for being here with us today. I truly appreciate your time. I wanted to start us off by speaking a little bit about what today is for. Today has been many years in the making for us at the Prairie Climate Center. It's been a long time coming, a very large project that is we spent many years developing and connecting with many amazing knowledge keepers, elders, and youth and leaders from across the country. So just to begin with as we start off, we called this the Indigenous Knowledges section, primarily as using the term as a way of being inclusive, to acknowledge location, and to make sure that we can encompass the many diverse nations and cultures and languages from across the country. It's not meant to be a label. It is a term similar to the words North American or European. It's just a way to show us where we are and help us put all of this amazing information and knowledge together. I also just wanted to acknowledge that I'm coming from Treaty 1 territory. I'm originally from Northern BC, but I'm really honored that I've been welcomed into this place and call it my home now. I also wanted to acknowledge all of the people who have really helped us get this going. The PCC team is a phenomenal team who we could not have done any of this without. I've been very fortunate to work with this amazing team, all of them scholars, thinkers, artists, and storytellers. It's been a phenomenal journey with them. And also every one of the elders and youth and knowledge keepers who have guided us throughout the whole process. And in particular, I wanted to acknowledge the late Elder Dave Kershane, who was guiding us and helped us and really develop this vision, and the Turtle Lodge, who had given us the space and brought us into their collective and helped us connect at many of their gatherings. And Ian can delve a little more into the details there. So I'd like to pass it off to Ian Morrow.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Again, Ian Morrow, Executive Director of the Prairie Climate Center at the University of Winnipeg. We're here on Treaty 1 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, and humbled to be here in terms of, like Brett was saying, the years of work that have really kind of gone into making this project come to fruition. And so I'm going to take you a little bit through that journey, just loading up some slides here. And it's an exciting moment and a real celebratory moment in terms of the relationality. The Climate Atlas is a web of relationships, and Brett is a graphic designer. He basically kind of built the kind of new layers of the Atlas and creating a welcoming space. And so when we originally launched the Atlas, it was a colonial map of Canada, and it used the traditional boundaries of provinces and territories, and it's got the best available climate model data in it that we've been able to partner with Environment and Climate Change Canada on, and it does a lot of great things. But immediately when we launched it with Catherine McKenna in 2018 as the first national climate portal, we knew it was groundbreaking. We knew that it was going to support the country. We knew that it was going to help with adaptation and planning, but we also knew it was wholly inadequate, that we needed to see Indigenous place names, that we needed to see Indigenous territories on this map. And so with funding support from various groups for the whole atlas, but in particular with respect to this Indigenous content, SSHRC, Environment Canada, and AFN and the Métis National Council, we've been able to do something truly tremendous, and that's what we're launching today. And today, Terry Duguid, the Parliamentary Secretary for Environment and Climate Change Canada, was supposed to be here, but he had to be in Parliament, and he sent some kind of kind words talking about how the climate data and the contribution of this tool demonstrates how climate research and Indigenous ways of knowing can respectfully be brought together to advance reconciliation, climate preparedness, and protection of the environment. So we wanted to thank Terry Duguid for his wanting to be here, but inability due to some pretty serious conversations taking place with the Canadian government right now. And so to give a bit of context, when you look at the IPCC process, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change at the United Nations, there have been people that have looked at the assessment reports, looking at how Indigenous content is handled and how generally the kind of scope is limited in length. There's very little critical engagement with respect to Indigenous knowledge systems, and the historical and contextual complexities of the Indigenous experience are largely overlooked. And so as a group wanting to kind of develop climate change materials for this country that is sometimes known as Canada, we wanted to do that differently. And so at the University of Winnipeg, we're closely connected to Saugeen First Nation and Turtle Lodge, and this is the late Elder Dave Kershane. And when we started the Prairie Climate Center, we went to him with tobacco and we said, we don't have the answers, we need guidance. And we asked Elder Dave Kershane to help guide us, and we built a very wonderful partnership with Elder Kershane and the Turtle Lodge. And I talked to his son Sabe yesterday about making a tribute to him here today, because he helped develop that vision for what we're launching today. And we are so thankful to Elder Kershane, the network of elders at the Turtle Lodge, and the people that have come together to help see this happen. And Laura Cameron was a master's student. And so in the research and the work you're going to see today, we've had master's student theses literally developing this work. And we published an article, A Change of Heart, on the Anjase Aki Summit on Climate Change at the Turtle Lodge. And so there's a whole feature on this inside the Atlas that you'll see in a moment. And in 2018, after we had launched the Atlas, we actually immediately brought a group of elders and knowledge keepers and leaders together, including Silawat Kluche here on the left of the screen. That's at the University of Winnipeg, and the meeting of Inuit, First Nations, and Métis leaders there at the Turtle Lodge with Elder Kershane sitting in the chair. And so this has been years in the making, years of collaborative development, and it's quite a celebration and a celebration again of Elder Kershane and all the people that have helped get us here. And so in terms of the work that we do, Indigenous ownership is critical. So this is research. We're a research organization. We have ethics. We follow all of the kind of protocols around the importance of OCAP and ownership and control and access and possession of Indigenous communities to their own content. And so when you see the videos, we vet all of these things with communities, and they own this content. And so a lot of this has been kind of, again, developing over years. This is imagery. We've got Kluani from the Yukon here, the regional chief, and this is all work taking place in the Yukon right now, where we take videos that we've shot with elders, and they're watching it on the screen there. We've got Dennis Dixon looking at himself, and we've got other elders kind of watching themselves and saying, yeah, I'm okay with how this is being portrayed. I like to see this. And so that's some of the work that we do. AFN actually has a national resolution talking about how they want to build this partnership with the Climate Atlas and with the Prairie Climate Center. And so that's what we're seeing here today. And the Métis National Council similarly has put a lot of support into making this happen. Graham Reed at AFN, Aaron Myers here at the Métis National Council, and we've had Métis filmmaker Chris Gaudry, summer student, helping to kind of help this work kind of move forward. And so it's really exciting to see all those relationships here. And then the work in the north, for me personally, is really rewarding because I cut my teeth in the Arctic. Joanna C. Karpik, we'll talk about in a second, was an elder that really brought me in. And Natalie Baird did a master's thesis working in the Arctic, and some of the films here are from that. And this participatory filmmaking where David E. Poisey, Inuk filmmaker in Pang, was really involved in the work that you'll see in that section. And so we're launched today. It's very exciting. Brett is here featured in the CBC News article. It's breaking nationally, and it's news literally around the country right now. So we're humbled to be here, and we're going to move directly into the kind of launch video that Brett and I had prepared to show you the Atlas, and then we're going to get into this conversation with these great leaders. We're so thankful to have the president of the Métis National Council, Cassie Caron, here, Regional Chief Kluani Adamek from the Assembly of First First Nations. So thankful to have you here, and Silawak Kluche, the Inuk climate change advocate and Nobel Peace Prize nominee here as well. And so we're going to do the kind of launch video so you can see what this is, and then we're going to go quickly into chatting with these wonderful folks about their perspectives on climate change. And so here we go. I'm going to share my screen once again and make sure that you can see this. So here we go.
All right, now we're going to take you through the Indigenous Knowledges section of the Climate Atlas.
And this is the first time that this has been seen. We have launched this today.
So I just wanted to preface this with talking about the term Indigenous and why we're using Indigenous knowledges. It's more of a way to encompass equality and bring together the people. It's not to label them. We don't think every nation and community and they have their own terms for who they are and where they're from. But this was an easier way for all of us to bring together the Indigenous knowledges. And the icon that I created at the top was meant to encompass the land itself, something that all of the cultures and identities and languages come from. So if we move down to the Indigenous Knowledges and Climate Change section, we click on that, and this is about how Indigenous knowledges relates to climate change, climate adaptation, how colonization has impacted climate change, and what it means to bring Indigenous knowledges into climate change research.
And the articles here are written by our team at the Prairie Climate Center. We've got a wonderful team that has kind of helped make this happen, and amazing kind of support and interest from the community. This is Regional Chief Terry Chigi from British Columbia on the banks of the Fraser River there, talking about climate change in BC. And this is years in the making, literally conversations going years across all these diverse territories that we're representing and bringing to you today.
And the Indigenous Knowledges section uses a distinction-based approach where we have broken down into First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And this just makes it a little bit easier for us to help encompass all the different communities that are across the country. So if we click into the First Nations section, you see off the top the National Climate Gathering video that we created with the Assembly of First Nations. It was a phenomenal gathering. You check out the video and find out more information about the gathering itself. And also we have the Understated Key initiative on climate change. And this was something that was really important to the development of this whole section. The late Elder Dave Cushane, who was very instrumental in guiding us and also connecting us with other knowledge keepers and elders from across the country and youth. And he really brought that together. It was his vision to kind of see something that would bring everyone together and help us become a part of adaptation in the future so that we can protect the lands for all of our future generations. And then if you go further down, you get more information about, there's films that we've created with First Nations, information and articles about the First Nations projects, initiatives, some of the climate activism, and how Indigenous knowledges and science affects and impacts research in the North and across the country.
And if we go to the Inuit section here, I kind of cut my teeth on working with Indigenous communities in the Canadian Arctic, working with Inuit. And so a lot of the work here goes back literally decades. And we kick that off with Silawak Kluche. And we're so fortunate to have Sila here today, and you'll hear from her in a moment, and an interview that we did, on her perspective, so you can hear directly from her. We've got ITK has given us permission to have their National Inuit Climate Change Strategy here, which is a fabulous document that takes you through the kind of priorities for Inuit and Inuit Tapiri Katanami as the governing kind of organization for Inuit across the country. Perspectives from elders like Elder Joanna C. Karpik, who I really learned a lot from in a place called Pangnertung, and his messages for youth, and very, very powerful video there. And Inuit Knowledge and Climate Change, so the film that I made with Zacharias Kunuk, and other content here that grad students have made, Natalie Baird working with youth up in the North, and then some other content from collaborators in other regions of the Arctic, just to kind of round this section out. And we also have Métis content here. And so if we take a look at the Métis section, this was developed with the Métis National Council. And although I'm not an Indigenous person, my family is Métis. My wife and children, they come from, intergenerational Métis families. And this was an honor to work on this part of the Atlas with MNC and other collaborators, including Métis filmmaker Chris Gaudry. And he helped develop these Métis knowledge and climate change pieces with MNC. We have projects with communities looking at the the first Métis community-owned solar project, and there's just so many solutions and opportunities here. This particular project, Métis Wildland Firefighters, looking at the traditional knowledge of Métis people in terms of how to protect the forest and how to protect communities against wildfire. Very powerful video on the ground, kind of thinking about and learning from communities. The impact of climate change on fishing communities here in Manitoba, the Métis of Saint Laurent, looking at the merger of Indigenous and, in this case, Métis knowledge and science with Métis dendroclimatologist Colin Larocque. Some really powerful content and reports here that MNC has put out on health vulnerability, and so a lot of content here from the Métis perspective as well.
And this will move us into the map itself. And, you know, one of the things that I really wanted to kind of remind people is that this is a place where we want all communities to be welcome and all perspectives to be welcome from the vast amount of communities across the country and the peoples of this land. So on the left side, you can see the icon. And when you click on that icon, that helps break the communities down into First Nations communities, Inuit communities, and Métis projects.
And so if we get into the map, which is being launched today, you know, this is a new map of this country called Canada that foregrounds First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, then their climate leadership, but also the potential climate impacts for the diverse Indigenous peoples of the country. And so when we click on First Nations, what you're seeing here is every single First Nation reserve community brought to the forefront and interactively mapped. And so you can literally see all the different communities from coast to coast to coast, and we've worked extensively with the Assembly of First Nations and their regional climate change coordinators to look at the data, to kind of vet the data, to think through it, to help us think how the map layers work, literally years in development. And so if we look at the sliders here, there's less and more climate change. So this represents an RCP, a representation concentration pathway, or basically more or less climate change. And when we look at the more climate change, that's a high emission scenario, a high carbon scenario. They call it RCP 8.5. And then on the right here, you've got time periods. And so we're looking at 2021 to 2050 and 2051 to 2080. So this map is a high, carbon or high climate change in a kind of far future scenario, and then you've got all of these different variables that you can select, and there's many of them, to think about how climate change might affect these different areas and communities. And so this is an important tool for risk assessment. It's an important tool for education. It's an important tool for adaptation planning and creating resilience. And the important thing here is that Indigenous communities have intergenerational resilience and adaptive capacity. They have so many strengths, and this science kind of connected with that kind of brings these worlds together. And so if we go into, this part of the world where we are right now, Brett and myself, and look at, for example, Long Plain, you can look at the number of plus 30 days in the historical baseline. So there's about 14 plus 30 days actually observed. And in that high carbon far future, in this kind of southern part of Manitoba for Long Plain First Nation, it's going to jump up to 52, or an increase of about 38 plus 30 days on average. And so you can see the map here, or the graph here, and the black line is the mean. That's that average. And what you're seeing is 24 global climate models bouncing up and down. And so that's the average. The extreme, for example, for Long Plain, if you look at a high kind of model, a hot model in an extreme year, it could jump up to 77 plus 30 days. So think about that for communities, for health, for infrastructure. It's very, very serious. And if you scroll down, you've got these data. So you can get a climate report. So if you actually click this, it will generate a report of all the data for the community that you're looking at. You can download the data for whatever you want to use. You can download a map, and then there's all the details of the data and how it can be used. And it is, as part of a larger partnership with Environment Canada, these data are the best available climate data for the country. And so it's quite powerful, and literally from coast to coast to coast. And if we kind of pop out and go to Inuit communities, we can scan back here on the plus minus buttons, and these are all 53 Inuit communities for the country. And again, this is the first time these kinds of data have been made available. And if we look at cold weather, for example, we go to minus 30 days and we zoom in. I've spent a lot of time up in Baffin Island here, say to a place like Pengnurtung, and we look at the loss of minus 30 days. So in the historical baseline, there's about 43 minus 30 days observed for Pang, and that's going to drop dropped by about 40 minus 30 days, leaving only a couple minus 30 days. So when you think a lot about the loss of the cold, you think about permafrost, you think about the infrastructure, buildings built on that permafrost, you think about roads and runways. This is really serious stuff, that loss of the cold. You can see the graph showing what the best available climate model data shows. And again, you can download all of this information, and it's available for every single community. And on that note, maybe I'll pass the mic here to Brett just to talk about the Métis projects and how that has worked.
So with the Métis projects, we work with MNC to map out a lot of the projects that are led by Métis initiatives about climate change and adaptation across the country. So when you click on those projects, you'll be able to see a link to the information about the projects themselves, and also you'll be able to get the data points from those projects as well. And there's also some films on the map about, again, going back to the wildland fires, the same videos that you find on the front section are available on the map as well, and you can see where those films are actually located and where they're from.
So again, this brings together science, Indigenous wisdom for the first time nationally, and we're very humbled to be here with our partners, the Assembly First Nations, who's helped fund this and work on this project, the Métis National Council, and our Inuit communities and collaborators, Silawaat Kluche. And so it's really exciting to kind of be able to have a conversation with these leaders here today.
Yes, and more importantly, I'd like to thank all of our team who's really helped us put all of this together. We work with an amazing group of people, and none of this could happen without them. The filmmakers, the researchers, and the data specialists, and everyone that is a part of the PCC has made this come to life. And then on top of all of the Indigenous leaders and knowledge keepers and elders and youth who have guided us through this whole process. So, you know, this is, like Ian said, years in the making. So many people involved, and you know, some have passed since the beginning of the project, and we like to honor them and just honor everyone who has made this happen, because this is really important for us, and I think it's going to be really important for a lot of communities who are trying to do work to save the land for their future generations.
And I guess we're into some great conversations.
Following that up, I would like to introduce to everybody Cassidy Caron, the president of the Métis National Council. Cassidy is a Métis with roots of the historic Métis communities of Batoche and St. Louis, Saskatchewan. She grew up closely connected to her Métis traditions, has extensive Indigenous research and program evaluation experience, and is a nation builder. Cassidy was elected as the first ever woman president for the Métis National Council in September of 2021. Welcome, Cassidy. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Brett. Tansei Kiowao. Hello, everyone. I want to begin by saying that I'm calling in from the lands of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, and I'm extremely grateful to be here today. Thank you, both Ian and Brett, for the introduction and sharing the incredible work that's been completed on the Climate Atlas. As Brett said, my name is Cassidy Caron. I'm the president of the Métis National Council, and my family comes from St. Louis and Batoche, Saskatchewan. I'm a proud Métis woman, and really, like I say, grateful to be here today. I'm really excited to be involved in the launch of this Indigenous Climate Atlas, because I know the amount of work that's been done here, and the work that's been done to support our communities and share their stories of environmental resilience. It's really amazing, and I'm glad to see this work being made available for everybody else now. I wanted to take 1 second here to thank my team at the Métis National Council, especially Erin Myers, for the incredible amount of work that she's done to work with our Métis governments to collect these stories that are included in the Atlas. The way in which our team at the Métis National Council has collaborated with the University of Winnipeg's Prairie Climate Centre to develop research, tools, and outreach that better understand and communicate the unique, timely, and critically important perspectives, knowledges, and experiences of Métis people regarding conservation and climate change is going to have an incredible impact on our communities. And the Métis Nation has a strong desire to be part of the solution for climate change. And as Métis people, we have a lot to offer. It is important for all Canadians to understand how the Métis have both historically been involved and continue to be involved in climate action today. And this atlas is an excellent place to showcase it. Working on this project has allowed us at the Métis National Council to really recenter our relationships with ourselves and the land and create the space for our Métis governments, their staff, and our Métis communities to highlight the incredible work that they're doing. It also provides a great opportunity to see what our First Nations and Inuit relations are doing and provides us with further opportunities to restore our relationships and support one another in collective climate action. It also provides us at the Métis National Council with an opportunity to demonstrate some of the great work that's being done through the Canada Métis Nation Accord, so our work that we do with the Government of Canada. For me, it's really all about relationships, recognizing that we're all connected to each other and to the land. It's a term that we use in the Cree language, Wakotowin, meaning we are all related and we are all connected. And tackling climate change requires all of us to come together and collectively develop and implement solutions. Climate change poses one, if not the biggest challenge to our citizens and our communities right now. As Métis, we are intrinsically tied to the land, and we have to do our part to protect it now and for our future generations. I'm extremely grateful for the work that's being done in our Métis communities to protect the environment. And to see this work being put on display now for all of Canada is a testament to the dedicated work of the Métis citizens across our nation. I was hoping to take some time today to highlight some of the incredible work being done in our communities, because the resilience and the ingenuity of our Métis governments and their respective teams and communities have shown us inspiring and demonstrates the profound level of care that we as Métis people have for the land and the world around us. So you'll see all of this in the Climate Atlas, but just really quickly going from west to east, in British Columbia, there is a focus on emergency preparedness within the Métis Nation of British Columbia. The work being done to create an emergency preparedness support framework is going to benefit not only Métis citizens in British Columbia, but all Canadians. In Alberta, the ASKI initiative, ASKI meaning the earth or the land in Cree, is an environmental monitoring initiative using methods that braid both traditional Métis knowledge with Western science. And through this initiative, the Métis Nation of Alberta team engages with citizens, hears their climate and environment-related concerns, and in turn designs and implements projects to monitor or address those concerns. So a series of monitoring projects have been launched since March 2020, primarily focusing on monitoring plants, fish, and wildlife across Alberta. In the Métis village of Green Lake in Saskatchewan, they run the first ever Métis-owned solar farm. The community started a solar energy project and installed 96 solar panels on their community hall. And through Métis leadership, Green Lake generates cheaper and more reliable power, which creates connection to the land, educational opportunities for the community, and is a source of both clean energy and cultural pride. And in the Métis Nation of Ontario, they've been working on expanding their environmental stewardship work, including citizen education and carbon offsetting and land conservation. One of their larger projects at the MNO has been they've been developing a water quality monitoring project across the province. And this project aims to combine Western science and traditional knowledge to help monitor areas and contaminants of concerns to the Métis. So for example, methyl mercury is a contaminant of concern for many MNO citizens. So the water monitoring program will be looking at the concentrations of that in the water and the fish as well, and at the very selected sites of importance in MNO's traditional territories across the province. So that's just a snapshot of some of that work that's captured in the Atlas. I wanted also to take a second to say how honored I am to join both Kluane Adamak and Sila Wat-Cloutier here today. It is really incredible to share this platform with strong Indigenous women as leaders working to protect and care for the land. Throughout history, many Métis women have played a key role in being caretakers of this planet. Our traditional harvesting practices are inextricably connected to the establishment, resilience, and continued spirit of Métis in Canada. Being on the land, connected with the land, and protecting the land, water, and skies in traditional roles as protectors of Mother Earth are culturally grounding ways for Métis women to connect with their ancestors and their communities. I also want to, of course, thank Ian and your team for the incredible work that's been done to collect all of this data, put the videos together, and ensure that our communities are getting the recognition that they deserve for the amazing work that they're doing in tackling climate change. And the Climate Atlas will allow us to share our stories and inform work for years to come. When I ran to become president of the Métis National Council, as a young person, I've made it really clear the level of importance that I place on protecting the environment for ourselves and for those who are coming after us. And so in my time as president, we've been really focused on ensuring that our governing members can have the tools and resources that they need to do the already incredible work that they're doing for their communities. So not only will our communities have access to these resources and stories, but Canadians will now be able to learn from our traditional knowledge to be able to help implement their own climate action plans. So with that, again, I just want to thank you for having me here and for working with our Métis communities in such a good way to highlight the work that they're doing across the Métis Nation homeland. The Climate Atlas has shown that the Métis Nation is one nation of many stories. Meaningful, lasting change is absolutely possible, but only when we create it together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for sharing your wonderful words with us. Next, I'd like to introduce Kluane Adamak. She is an AFN Yukon Regional Chief and holds the AFN portfolio for climate change and environment. She's a proud citizen of Kluane First Nation, and Adamak belongs to, pardon my pronunciation, the Duchlawedi killer whale clan, and comes from the diverse Tlingit, Southern Shoshone, German, and Irish origins. Thank you, Kluane, for joining us today.
Sheesh. Brett, you did incredible there. It's as if you said that before. So Ganap Sheesh for your very kind introduction and joining you from the traditional territory of the Ta'anquatch'an and Kwanlin Dun First Nation here in Whitehorse, Yukon. First and foremost, I mean, look, Ian and Brett and team, for those of you who were part of the beginning of the presentation, some beautiful photos of actually my home community in Luanmun, Kluane Lake. And, these two and their team spent some really beautiful time with my people, my Uncle Dennis and my late grandmother Agnes, who for those of you who know me, the direction that she always gave was to just do it. So perhaps far ahead of Nike, but that, the thinking through things and the action that is required to really just do. If you think and you feel you need to do something, to do it. And I think that really does speak to, our region. And I'll speak a little bit about the regional context and then move to some of the national pieces. As mentioned, my responsibilities include the national environment and climate portfolios. But certainly when it comes to a northern approach to climate, and I'm so excited, to share this space as President Karan mentioned, and also with the incredible matriarch and leader, Sila. So excited to see you and to reconnect. It's been such a hard time during COVID and especially with the climate state of emergency. Our region was propelled to just do. And really the work that we've been doing here in the Yukon includes our their own approach to climate. So we'll be launching a climate strategy in the fall. We're doing engagements all summer, but really creating that space for the next generation and really to be held up at the same time by our knowledge keepers, because it is so important that we're always building those bridges, with the knowledge that's come before and our protocols, and supporting our young people, especially young women. As was mentioned, the water really does fall from a First Nation perspective to the women in terms of ensuring that we're taking care of the water properly. And in my home community of Luan Mun, our lake, this is all very Googleable, but our lake has gone down by 10 feet, within the last 10 years. And what that really means for us is changes to where people are ice fishing. Our docks needed to be removed. The places that we used to go aren't quite there anymore. And so it does have the impacts. And so when we think about the way that the Climate Atlas can support us, it's sort of what our knowledge keepers talk about when it's about being as prepared as possible. And I think about all the aunties whose cupboards are always full, or we're always sort of gathering for a potlatch, and in that same way, we need to be gathering all the knowledge that we can to be able to make the best decisions for our people. And that is a balance of the traditional knowledge and, in this case, what Western modern science can show us. And so I think for our region and for the AFN, who, again, is a proud partner in this project, I mean, seeing you walk us through a few examples of how this can actually help people on the ground, this is exactly what people need. And from a First Nation perspective, we continue to advance the work of our own strategy, which really is about a lens. So, the first sort of, I would say, circle, if you can imagine it, is really about, the legislative, legal, and policy ecosystem. And then we go next to our lived reality. And of course, then our worldview at the center. And so, the way in which this project and undertaking over the many years has come to be really does, and as my colleague, President Caron, mentioned, working with people in a good way. And I want to acknowledge, former Elder Courchain and all the work that he has contributed, and the many other knowledge keepers, to make sure that we're getting it right. Because far too often are we seeing processes that aren't inclusive and that aren't respectful of our protocols and processes. And so it's so great to see, Brett, you leading this project and in partnership with Ian, so that things are able to be done in a really good way. And with that, I mean, First Nations across the country, alongside our Métis and Inuit brothers and sisters and those who identify, we continue to be leaders in this space. And we have always been leaders in this space from a sustainability and environmental protection perspective. And so, we join across the country the, 197, so nearly 200 climate projects over 1 megawatt led by Indigenous peoples right across the country. And really, the chiefs in assembly and regional leadership really pushing to ensure that information is not only provided to communities, but that we're also part of creating that information. And so I think that, with this Climate Atlas, I am really excited. We had a chance as a team to talk about this yesterday and was like, wow, like now we can plan in a way that we've never potentially been able to plan before in terms of having access to this information in a really clear way. And I'm also mindful, coming from a background that isn't an environmental science background, but knowing what the impacts are of climate, I think this is exactly where, something that all of our people, regardless of their, professional or personal backgrounds, that information is clear and it's readily accessible for everybody is really, really important. And I know if my grandma were here, she'd be really excited, because the days that are cold and the days that are too hot are definitely things that she would have to, learn how to navigate in terms of her hunting practices and being on the land. And so our people need to be ready already. So I want to say thank you. Gynach Chish. I look forward to continuing to learn, and of course for First Nations across the country to be even more prepared to respond to the state of our lands, our waters, and of course our four-leggeds and two-winged. So with that, Gynach Chish, and thank you again for the opportunity to join you today.
Thank you so much, Kalani. And next, it's an honor for me to introduce Seela Wat-Cloutier. She was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for her groundbreaking work in linking climate change and human rights, especially in the Arctic. She is a Canadian president for the Inuit Circumpolar Council, and later their international chair, representing 155,000 Inuit from Canada, Greenland, Alaska, and Russia. Her highly celebrated book, The Right to Be Cold, was released in 2015. Again, thank you for joining us, Seela.
Here we go. Ilani witok nakormelo nasi. Chile bunga utrami mugalo sumutama nakalunano naganigama loktorama. Yes, wonderful to be here with you all today, and to be with Cassidy and with Kluani. Lovely to see you again, Kluani, after all this time that we haven't been able to connect in person. It's just been quite the ride, hasn't it, for all of us as we deal with the changes and the kinds of up and down that we've been going through for the past couple of years. So imagine to come out at the other end with this kind of a launch, even throughout that time where we all felt paralyzed at some points in terms of trying to move ahead with so many issues. So this is a day of celebration, definitely. Thank you so much, Ian, and your team for working so diligently on these issues in the many years. I was at the founding meeting or the visioning meeting that happened about 3 years ago now already at the University of Winnipeg, and I was just very honored to be part of this. Ian and I do go back a little ways, and so we've built this trusting relationship since a while, because he was the one that got the resources together for me to actually start the writing of my book when I was at the University of Mount Allison, where we co-taught the human dimension to climate change. So this is about trust, and this is about building those kinds of relationships that can build, Western science, through universities, through different means to come together and really address the issues that have a great impact on our people, but also giving the tools to be able to move forward in ways that we have never done before and have that kind of accessibility for our communities to use. And so I guess to use this old word of empowerment, this is kind of the way in which it's done. This is the tangible way in which things can get done. But before I continue, I want to honor the remarkable energy and spirit of Dave Corshane that I had the opportunity and the remarkable time with him when we were at the University of Winnipeg and went to the Turtle Lodge and spent a couple of days there. And I was just fed by this man in so many ways. So I honor Dave, who was part of this right from the start. My life's work goes back about, I would say probably close to 25 years now. I know I'm dating myself here, but certainly, the issues of environmental degradation of the Arctic has been at the forefront of my life's work, not just in the elected positions, but well beyond it. And I have been flying on my own as an independent speaker and author since then, trying to get people to understand the human dimension to it, where climate change on so many levels, that so many, systems have been oftentimes about just the wildlife, where the Arctic is better known for its wildlife than its people. And to try to get the world to understand the whole historical context of the challenges that we face at the social and health levels in our communities have been really, the way in which I, as a woman, as a mother, with that strong instinct to protect what I love, has been really the energy, the impetus that really has kept me going all of this time. And so here I am at this grand age, still working at these issues, because for me, it's really about that. It's about the future of our kids. It's about the power of our Indigenous wisdom and knowledge that really has gone undervalued and under-recognized in a world that knows more about our wildlife than us, the people, and that, you know, to be depicted really as the victims of globalization, commercialization, colonialism. Okay, those are all can be very, very true because we've been poisoned in our food chain through the persistent organic pollutants, and we've been now with CO2, with the pollution and the atmosphere that is being blanketed with CO2, we're being very negatively impacted by our way of life as the ice and the glaciers melt in the Arctic. There's no doubt about all of that. But in reality, the world doesn't know the brilliance and the ingenuity and the wisdom of Indigenous knowledge in ways that they should and could be tapping into that incredible rich resource of how we can lead the world to a more sustainable world. And so in that sense, it's been a daunting task, and I'm not the only one. That certainly, as we know, through the work of Kluane and many others, and now the young leader, Cassidy, I'm very proud of you to be where you are today as a young person working on these issues. And we will come together and to bring this kind of project together, not just in terms of our knowledges, but in terms of that spirit and that energy that needs to now be elevated to another level. And during this time of the pandemic, this is the time to really make our mark, because now is the time, not just with the pandemic, that is teaching us to be reflective in a much deeper way and to understand these disconnects that have happened in the world, that it's not just about one country to blame or one species of an animal to blame for what is happening with this pandemic, but what we have been doing to the to the habitat of all wildlife in the world for decades now, that we have been trying as Indigenous peoples to signal to the world for a long time, that we have to understand better and not just see Indigenous people as victims, but as teachers of sustainability, teachers of protection, of how we can work together on these issues. And so I'm very encouraged and very impressed and very excited that this kind of work that has come in this way now, that has more accessibility, because even more the younger generation in our Indigenous world are tapping into technology and embracing it. And this can be used in so many incredible ways to be able to better educate not just our communities in terms of this is what this is going to be like, to be able to move and plan for infrastructure, plan for all kinds of ways in which we can do things to address this issue and feel like we have a sense of control over the matter, which we had not had in so long ago. You know, I worked on back in late 1918, in the 90s up to 2004, the Arctic Climate Impact Assessment under the auspices of the Arctic Council, which was the first comprehensive, detailed assessment of climate change, even before IPCC came out. And it was able to incorporate Indigenous knowledge into every chapter of that assessment. And yes, it was a real collaborative effort. But, you know, this particular work that Ian and his team and we have all put in together is now really a cut above everything else that has been done before, because it really is about that sense of we have more control over what is happening with the changes and what we could be doing for the planning ahead. And so I am very encouraged by all of that. And it allows for us to really start to look at these issues even more so as a human rights issue, which is the work that I did a lot in pioneering that work on connecting climate change to human rights and making people aware of that, much more about that historical context of what has happened in our world. And as I say, this is the time, not just the pandemic, but the recovery of the children from residential school also has started to really soften the hearts of Canadians as well as others and say, oh, this is really true. So now that we are in that place and space within ourselves where there's personal transformation actually happening, as we witness that, there's a lot more to happen for sure. And that change will happen at the speed of empathy, and it will happen at the speed of trust. But at the same time, you sense that there's a movement and there's shifts happening within people. And I often use this quote, and I will share it with you today because I think it fits in all of this, is that the changes that happen and the partnerships that are now being built today are really about that personal transformation that is happening with the attitudes about one another and the respect for one another. And as Marianne Williams says, personal transformation can and does have global effects. As we go, so goes the world, for the world is us. And the revolution that will save the world is ultimately a personal one. And so it's really about that. It's about how is it that we have, it isn't just the context or the contents of this work that is being done that we're launching today, but the process that was taken based on respect, based on, connection, an understanding of one another and how we can build that from Western science, Southern universities with Indigenous communities. That is the way to go forward on the issues that we need to go forward with. And this is the time to strike while that iron is hot, to be able to really do this. And so this is timely. This is timely on so many fronts. So, I leave you with that short sentiments now for now. There's lots more to talk about in terms of moving forward in conservation economies rather than just, going with what is going to even make this worse in terms of climate change. And there's lots more to do, but this is that start here that we're working on today. And I'm very honored that I have been part of this in a small way, to be visioning with those 3 years ago and to be moving forward. And I really look forward actually to working in particularly with my fellow Indigenous women, because I think it's that kind of consciousness leadership. And you could call it maternal instinct to protect what we love. You can call it all those things together. I think consciousness leadership is going to be the way to go in terms of how we can understand as women more so, because we're mothers and because we're maternal, there is a difference between being strong and using our strength from confidence, and force, which is trauma-based. And so it's to understand these pieces of how we can be outraged by many things, but we don't have to be raging about it in doing so. And so, again, it's that grounding that I find is very encouraging today. And this isn't about saying that males can't. That's not the point. The point is about women leadership is now really starting to look at these issues and building that kind of trusting relationship as well. So I thank each and every one of you who have taken part in all of this, because I think to move forward and show the world that we can partner with Western universities and scientists is a way forward in making this work through incredible technology that will give control, much more control to our communities as a whole. So thank you, Ian and the whole team, for this remarkable work that you have done.
Thank you so much, Sila, Kluani, Cassidy. I could not have put it any better myself. Just to kind of reflect on everything you just said, Sila, is incredibly important to me. The confidence that I have in who I am as a Gitxsan person and where I come from, my name, my clan, and everything is through our mother. The Gitxsan people are matrilineal people, and patriarchy was never a part of our society. And it's something that's new, part of the colonization that has changed our societies where I come from. And it was really important for me and the team to make sure that we had leaders that we felt who would be able to start us off in a good way. And just in the same breath that you speak of the mothers leading and the matriarchs leading, was the same reason that we reached out to all of you, because there are just the words of hope and the calm and power and wisdom that comes from our mothers that we can't get anywhere else. And that's something that's really important for us to reflect and to show through this work that we do. And it's something that we have gained through the work that we do. And myself, it's just something that I was raised with. And all the time I spent with my mom and my grandmother and my aunties, that's what guides me. That's what gives me hope. And, that's the only thing that has kept me from, getting into too much trouble and to not following the good path. And so I appreciate it. And I loved all of the words that the three of you have shared. And, I want to pass it on to Ian, because there's a lot more that we would really love to discuss and hear from you. And it's just, again, really important for us to get those perspectives. And I truly appreciate your time. All right, Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Brett, and thank you, everyone. We've had some kind of questions in the chat here, and one of the questions was about Indigenous knowledges themselves. This idea of traditional knowledge, Indigenous knowledge, and I think a lot of people are learning a lot right now, obviously, from the kind of great presentations that have been made. And so I'd like you each to kind of talk about what Indigenous knowledge means from your own perspectives, but also in particular talking about the importance of language. And so in the Climate Atlas, we've got English and French, and we were actually talking with the folks from Indigenous Climate Action. We've been doing briefings literally with a bunch of different groups on this project. And we were talking about, those are the languages of the colonizers, right, in a very real way. And what about the importance of Indigenous languages, and how do we start thinking about that? And maybe I'd like to start with Sila, if you would kind of take a crack at that. But also, your name is Sila, but Sila in Inuktitut means something very specific. And you were talking about leadership with consciousness. And maybe you could start us off reflecting on Indigenous wisdom, Indigenous knowledge from your perspective, and the importance of kind of conscious leadership and that word Sila.
Yeah, well, I mean, I compared to the hunters and the elders and Indigenous knowledge is I mean, it's a remark. There's some that you can't even describe, but there's very concrete ways in which Indigenous knowledge, of course, is to be able to navigate in the harshest environments that we live in. But for me, I always talk about the hunting culture that is so not well understood in terms of its power, not just in terms of how our children are taught how to be natural conservationists and proficient providers for the community, but the actual holistic way in which our children are taught for the coping and life skills that are required to become that proficient provider and natural conservationist are taught in a powerful way. Our ice is our university. When you're waiting for the snow to fall, the ice to form, the animals to surface, the winds to die, you're being taught patience. You're being taught how to be courageous and bold at the right time. You're being taught how to be persistent and not give up, how not to be impulsive, how to be courageous, and how to be meticulous and focused about everything and observant all around you. And so and you're ultimately developing your sound judgment and your wisdom, silatunat we call in our language. And so the natural way in which the land teaches you is forming the real strength of who you're going to be able to pass on the kind of knowledge that is required, not just to survive the harsh environment and the ice that we live on, but these skills are very transferable. And what we're learning about the incredible, powerful way in which hunting cultures teach their children on that natural environment are so transferable that the ones who have had that integrated within themselves are more apt to make better choices for them in the modern setting, and they're more apt to not let the stressors overtake them if they have had that integrated within them. And so that's just one example of how the way in which we do things, perhaps they're more values and principles of Inuit culture that I'm talking about, but the traditional knowledge that we are learning, how to navigate all of these systems and how to read the conditions and all of that are starting to become minimized as a result of climate change. And so we really have to step up the game in terms of not losing that, because it isn't just the ice we're losing, it is the wisdom that goes with it that we're losing. And that is the key here in terms of what it is that we're fighting for. And because colonialism and historical traumas has really suppressed and oppressed and really, really diminished our spirit to be able to have that within us to survive all the odds in the kind of environment we live in, then we have to deal with it from that perspective. And so protecting our way of life and our climate and the environment are really about protecting the future for our children. And so those are the things that to me, I have come to try to understand and make those kinds of connections in terms of the incredible value that Inuit culture and Indigenous culture, because it's really a universal issue with Indigenous peoples in terms of our connection to our land and to our culture and to our knowledges and the wisdom that it brings out. And so I keep saying that what we are learning as we come out the other side of understanding these pieces with the social and health problems and the suicides that we face is that the solution lies within our culture. Our culture can bring us back on our feet, on solid ice, pun intended. We can do that. And as well as, and I think Indigenous culture is what the world seeks in terms of its medicine to address the issues of unsustainability. And so it's very rich, it's very powerful, and we shouldn't be just seen as victims to these issues, but as teachers to turn the tide on how we are addressing these issues of unsustainable activities.
Oh, Nakumit. Maybe we'll go backwards from the way we came. Kluani, did you want to reflect on kind of Indigenous knowledges, language, and anything to kind of help people who are following along here kind of better interpret, the intent of this project and really being located in the knowledge of communities?
Thank you. And, I think in terms of what Sila was talking about, I think ultimately, in a term that perhaps our allies may be able to understand, it really is about, both worldview and also about protocols, ceremony, and responsibilities. So, it sort of very much attuned to the way that we look at rights. With rights come responsibilities. So, the rights that we have to hunt and fish and to practice, that comes with a responsibility in our culture, right? Is, you take care of, the animals and they're going to take care of you. And so especially in those hard times, as our elders talk about, and we are in hard times right now. And climate, change has really shifted the way in which we, and the places, perhaps I'll say that we go to. And when we talk about language, I know my community is like almost there with getting most of our signs sort of either, there's Emma Johnson Street, who was a great-great-grandmother of mine. There's also, Dunanana Kweye, which means children playing in our community. So it is, I think, the way that we think about place names is also really important, because it, as in terms of the Indigenous knowledge that comes with that, there were stories about why places had certain names, and those stories might have been linked to something that had happened there. It could have been linked to, the birth of someone new there. Like there's so many different reasons and there's so many place names in the Yukon, and in my own territory, I know there's so much more that I have to learn. I mean, we say, the Slims River, but it really is Aichu. And so it's even, getting into common practice of us using, the place names, because the significance and the meaning is really different than that of sort of, English language. And, want to acknowledge that there is so much happening here. I know in the Yukon, but right across the country, in terms of young people really stepping into that space and being able to be supported to learn language. I look at this sort of modern world and have had conversations with young people, and not, just young people, but everybody really. It's like, okay, so you've got 2 weeks of vacation a year if you're working full time. Like, do you spend that at a language camp? Do you spend that hunting? Do you spend that, right? Like we're at a different place in time in terms of needing to find that balance of, what it is that we have to sort of be responsible for in terms of family and being providers as men and women and those who identify, but also that balance of how do we take our traditional teachings with us, and how do we create spaces so that people are able to do more of that practicing? Like here in the Yukon, there's this beautiful language program, and that's their job. Like these students receive a stipend, and they're learning their language so they can still contribute to family. They can still, be present in community, and sort of their day is spent with knowledge keepers learning their language. And I know that model might not work for everybody, nor is that a model that everybody may be comfortable with, but that's a model for Champagne-Ajiac that's working for them. And so that's great. And I think that's where, when we take this climate atlas, and we think about, language, I mean, I think it would be great to of course, have languages there. And if that's possible and communities can support you with that. But I'm also mindful of sort of that emotional weight that I think a lot of our language speakers have to be able to do everything, right? To translate everything and answer everybody's questions. So I think it is a balance of sort of, connecting with community, figuring out if that's possible. In the Yukon can help point you in the right direction in terms of who to speak with. There's some young language learners. They just went out on an on-the-land camp for about a week. So it's like, there are some really amazing things happening, but we're still, I think, we're still at that place of really rebuilding and relearning. And we should be, I think we should all be really proud of how far we have come, considering that, we have a long way to go. And I'm not to say that there's not a lot more work left to do. But I certainly, from my grandmother not growing up speaking Southern Shoshone because she went to residential school, to then having, young people, great-grandchildren in school being able to speak in Southern Shoshone, like that is powerful. So let's continue to foster that energy and foster those relationships, and to equip our nations with all the information that they need, like the Climate Atlas, that can really help with supporting and building all of what it is that we want to build in our respective nations.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, it's humbling and an honor to have been in your territory and to meet your community and your grandmother. And we interviewed her, and yeah, wonderful kind of people all over the landscape. And so again, thank you for being here, Kluane. And Cassidy, that idea of kind of Métis knowledge, language, Michif, any thoughts on that you'd like to share?
Sure. And I guess it's kind of tying together some of what both Sila and Kluane have shared. But I think really, what it comes down to is traditional Indigenous knowledge is really an unparalleled knowledge of place. And you think about it, Indigenous peoples have been here in a place for a really long time. And Sila mentioned that this is, it's universal as well. And Indigenous peoples, we weren't simply just our ancestors. We weren't just simply surviving. They were thriving. And I think it's important for all of us to consider that all of the different things that it takes to be able to not just survive, but to thrive generation after generation in a place, and only that place in the world. And so, of course, it takes the ability to find food, water, and shelter. Of course it does. But it also requires an understanding of how to steward and manage one's environment sustainably over the long term. And that in and of itself requires understanding habitats, ecosystems, life cycles of plants and animals, the relationships between all places and parts of the natural world, when it's appropriate to harvest and how much to harvest, and when it's absolutely inappropriate to harvest. And it also takes knowledge systems to organize all of that information. And like you were saying, it takes a language to describe it all. It's all connected. It then also takes, education systems to transfer that knowledge between people and generations. And it takes organizational structures to manage resources collectively as societies, as well as laws and governance to guide. And I mentioned that one of the laws that we govern ourselves by, or traditional societies governed ourselves by, was Wokotowin, which means we are all related. And all of this is inextricably a web of how we are all connected. It's our relationships with the land and with each other. And so, all of these systems, Indigenous knowledge, language, governance, resource management, health, education, it's all fundamentally grounded in place and in our people's place in this world and no place else. So really, it's that unparalleled knowledge of place that's enabled our people to not only survive, but thrive for countless generations. And again, just really highlighting how everything is connected. And I can't help but think to myself, how much richer would we all be if we took the time to understand and respect and embrace all of those knowledge systems and take the time to understand how they're all connected, and just lots to think about there.
Wow, wonderful. Part of what is going on in my head right now, I remember being on the land in Pang where Joanna C. Karpik, this elder I was talking about, cut open a seal. And when he opened that seal, it was almost like opening an encyclopedia, the language, all the things that kind of exploded as he was talking about the parts of the animal. And it was just like amazing, right? That the language can take you so kind of deep into the kind of ecology, the biology, the systems. And I think it's highly problematic that Indigenous knowledge is seen as this anecdotal thing, right? It's like a place on the map over here, but when you look at it collectively and the atlas starts to do that, it starts to look at how robust it is across landscapes. It truly is kind of transformational and humbling. So, we've probably got enough time for another round of questions. And I think trying to think what the most kind of pertinent thing to talk about would be. I know Kluani, you were talking about policy and the climate lens and how this kind of operates in the modern world, right? And I think we might want to talk about your experience as leaders connecting Indigenous knowledge and science and policy to change the world. We have a short amount of time to get this right. There's a national adaptation strategy being developed. There's all these things going on right now. And how do we kind of work together collaboratively, bringing science and traditional knowledge together to affect the kind of policy change that we need to see and the actual change that we need to see. And Sila, maybe we'll kind of start with you and kind of go in the same order, given your experience working at the highest levels of the United Nations, developing international treaties on, persistent organic pollutants and the Stockholm Convention. Do you want to take us into that a little bit further? How do we get this right so that we, in two-eyed seeing, build on the strengths of all ways of knowing to really kind of land us in a safe way? Do you want to kick us off, Sila?
Yes, this goes back a long time. I'm not that young anymore, but way back when I was first elected with ICC, with the Inuit Circumpolar Council, I hit the ground running internationally when the United Nations was just starting up their their negotiations on eliminating at their source these persistent organic pollutants that had made their way up through the weather patterns into our food chain. And because we're avid eaters of marine mammals in the Arctic, we became the net recipients of these toxins, persistent organic pollutants, and the nursing milk of our mothers. The Inuit women were having to think twice about nursing their babies as a result of these toxins that ended up in the nursing milk. The very toxins that pesticides that African women were using to protect their babies from dying from malaria. And so for us, it wasn't just an issue of it being a chemical story, or it wasn't just an environmental issue, but one of urgent human health. And so we had built this data already in terms of, over a course of a decade, long before I even entered into the arena of politics, that there had been this data built up with Health Canada and with Industry Canada and many other departments within the government of Canada, as well as, many others had already been working on these issues, including our own communities that had mobilized themselves fairly quickly, knowing that this was an issue of an urgent health matter, and that we weren't going to be standing idly around while we were being poisoned from afar, and that we were going to have to choose between our country food and cultural heritage. And so for us, it was an urgent matter. So yes, it was very difficult. Of course, it was very difficult to be able to start to partner with governments who at first saw us as a thorn in their thigh, and until they started to realize that we were really going to be helpful to them get their work done right in terms of the partnerships that would be developed. And so it took a while, but in the end, we showed the world that we could sing, governments and Indigenous peoples could sing from the same song sheet and do something very effective and translate this kind of data that built up, just like what you've built up in your team here, and translate it into international policy. And, that UN treaty, the Stockholm Convention, became one of the fastest in those days, the fastest treaty to have been signed, ratified, and enforced in the history of the UN. Because people came together, we were able to build partnerships with industry, unlikely partners, even though we didn't necessarily partner that closely with Greenpeace and others, but we still worked with their rich resources that they had, much more than the resources and the research that we didn't have. So it can be done, and it was done effectively. And this is the kind of, taking that kind of science and data that you've been building up with this, that can be done to build strong, regional policies, national policies, and in fact, international policies. So it can tap into all of these processes that are needed today as a concerted effort to address the issues of climate change. So the potential is there. It's very potent, this work that you've done, that we've all done together. And again, with the human rights angle, that we again, as videotaped all of our many elders from Canada and Alaska, elders, women, and seasoned hunters on their observations of climate change. And we put it into this legal document. And while we're doing this, targeting the United States, we worked with mostly Americans of all things. The Center for International Environmental Law in Washington, D.C., with earthjustice.org in San Francisco. And we built this strong legal petition with over 700 legal footnotes. So you can imagine the work that went into that for over 2 years, with the videotaped testimonies of elders that we had videotaped, which are on isuma.tv, by the way. And if you ever wanted to see the actual petition itself too, it's at earthjustice.org. And we put all of these remarkable observations of our hunters and elders and women into those rights that we were defending, Inuit rights, which are already entrenched in the American Declaration on the Rights and Duties of Man. And although they chose not to go forward with it, with our petition, it became a place of change in terms of changing the discourse and the language of climate change globally. It became an issue, a human issue, rather than one that was just economic science and in that way, and politics. And so I think we had allowed for others to then step up to their plate and defend their rights as well. So these are certain examples, that I have worked on, and others, I certainly didn't do it alone. It was just that kind of building of partnership and the building of the data and building of all the information that is needed to really step forth, because we use the ACIA to really implant that into the work that we did with the legal petition. And that was Western science and Indigenous knowledge coming together at that time as well. So this, again, just to bring it back to here, this takes it to another level because of the modern technology that is used, and to be able to have our communities be taking this on, and for whatever purposes that they feel is to build partnerships, as well as to really amplify the message of this being a very serious matter that needs to be addressed in a very serious and urgent way.
Wow. That human dimension, putting the human face on this, Sila's work really kind of demonstrates that. And, again, the Stockholm Convention as a model for how we actually get binding traction legally to move forward. There are some real hopeful stories there. And Sila, your work and your Nobel Peace Prize nomination, because of that is a reflection of how this can all fit together. Regional Chief Adamek, would you like to kind of reflect on policy, Indigenous wisdom, science, and how we move forward in a good way to kind of see the change we need to embody here?
Yeah, again, going back to our teachings regionally, we have a clan system. So you're sort of from the wolf moiety or the crow moiety, and so it's always about balance. So you traditionally, a wolf and a wolf, wouldn't be together. It would, always sort of respecting that balance of wolf and crow. And so when we potlatch, if a wolf person passes away, the clan does what it's required and serves, the crow people. And so it's always this sort of balance of reciprocity. So my partner and I, who, because I am killer whale on the wolf side, he then sits on the crow side. So when we go to potlatch, we don't get to sit together, right? It's either he is serving me or I am serving him and his clan. And so it sort of, it is that reciprocity. So I think, when we, I think the same can be attuned for the gender roles, however you identify in our communities with men and women. Like there were always roles, and for our Two-Spirit people, there were always these roles, and so everything was always in balance. And I think that's where, when it comes to traditional knowledge, Indigenous knowledge. And I know that there's, discussion happening about, well, what is traditional knowledge and what is Indigenous knowledge? The way that I see it, and I think the way my grandma would describe it is, all of the teachings and the ways that we know and see the world, and the way that we know to respect the land, the water, and the animals, and the teachings that we have that support those, that view and those values, that would be, I think, the way that my grandma would talk about it. It's who we are, she would say. So that, to me says that it is a balance of, and to, Sila's point about Canadians largely and other non-Indigenous people really seeing us, and recognizing and respecting us as our own people. And, with distinct ways of knowing and being and making decisions and protocols and ceremony and culture and language. And so we have to, there's no other way than to value and to put incredible value to that. And look at the way that you balance that with, Western modern science, because there's a lot that we can learn from that too. And I think, not speaking for, but I think our elders here in the region, and what, I'm coming to learn, because as we all know, when you meet with elders, you can't get a straight answer when you ask a question, right? It's like a story, or they talk about something else and they're like, okay. And you're like, but can you help me understand this? But I think what I've gathered from them in these very recent conversations about climate is that there has to be a balance. And that balance, in the same way that, culturally, as people, we think about the clan system, is that there has to be that balance, and there's always this reciprocity. But we absolutely have to hold the traditional knowledge, Indigenous knowledge, ways of knowing and being with really high regard and with respect, because when we think about Kluane Lake, and I'll just share just a really quick story. When people say that, it's usually not really quick, but I can make it really quick. My dad told me when he was really young that one of the older elders, one of the matriarchs, said, you need to be ready for when Kluane Lake becomes a river. And it's so interesting, because here we are in 2022. And like I said, Kluane Lake has gone down by 10 feet. So our elders have known that things are going to shift. We've lived through, as people from the Arctic, Sila, our people have lived through, the glacial changes, incredibly cold temperatures, and still the stories and the knowledge it continues on, and it helps guide us. And now the climate reality we're dealing with, it's not solely a climate problem. We're dealing with a people problem. And as human beings, what we have done as human beings has left our reality to be what it is right now. And we have to make those changes to sort of get back into balance. So that, I think, is what is from our perspective, I think, here in the Yukon, but from a First Nation perspective, it's got to be that reciprocity and that balance.
So thank you, RC Adamek, that balance, that reciprocity, important words. And Cassidy, to kind of wrap things up before Brett gives some kind of closing comments, any comments on how we move forward in a good way, thinking about all these things?
Sure. So I guess just really quite simply, I think about the advocacy work that Sila and Kluane and I do, and most recently Kluane and I have done some advocacy work together, for example, with the ministers of environment from across our country, and really trying to explain to them that we can balance this knowledge. We can balance Indigenous traditional knowledges and Western ways of knowing, and we can and we want to be partners. But often we find ourselves in moments when things freeze right there. A lot of people, they might not know where to go from there, frozen by not knowing how to do it in a good way. And I think the work that's being done by the Climate Atlas, just showing people, giving them the tools, giving them the resources, showing people how our knowledge is woven into some efforts that are being made today to tackle the climate crisis, and giving governments and organizations the tools to be able to work with us in a good way and really understand it in different ways, I think is really positive. And I think that the Climate Atlas is just such a fantastic resource that I think is only going to propel us forward in ways that we haven't moved forward quite yet. So thank you.
Well, Marcy, and over to Brett. Thank you so much, Cassidy, Sila, and Kluane, and Brett, for some kind of closing comments.
Yes, thank you everybody who has stayed with us. Thank you everyone who has presented for us today. It has been an honor to be able to listen and get some teachings from all of you, and also just to thank all of those who participated today. A lot of you, thank you for your time and being part of this important day for us, and all of those who have built this amazing tool. It's really an honor that you gave us that time. And I also just like to really acknowledge again everyone behind the scenes who are, the University of Winnipeg, who helped us with the event, and all of our team at the PCC who just tirelessly work in the background to help us look amazing and do the great work that we do. And again, Ian, for being a great partner and someone to work with. And I've really appreciated this ability for us to work hand in hand together. We've really kind of truly put this two-eyed seeing to work. And this is an example of us working hand in hand, taking the knowledges that I carry from my grandmothers and my mother, and all of the knowledges that Ian carries with him, and putting that together and bringing it to all the research that we do and all the work we do going forward, and doing everything in that good spirit, and making sure that we don't ever offend as many as we can. We want to do this all in a good way at every step. And just for those who are wondering, we will be, as soon as we get consent, we'll be able to post the video itself. We just want to make sure that everyone is okay with us resharing this recording. We'll try to share it with you. And also those who want to know more about the climate atlas, in the future we will be doing Eventbrite with more technical look at the site itself, on how to use the data and everything like that going forward. We will continue to provide resources for all of you. And again, thank you so much for your time. For any of those who are traveling home after this, or those who are at home, may have a good rest of your day. And I hope that everyone has some good tea and coffee this afternoon. It's always good to have some tea to debrief yourself. And thank you again. Thanks, Ian, for getting us through this awesome event.